Our second section in 1.1 is going to be properties and operations. Identity is going to be the first one we talk about. So, what can I do to a number to not have its value change? If I want to start with and end with the same thing, what can I do to it mathematically? Well, can I add a 1 to it? Nope, that would not be A. I want to get A back. Can I add a 0 to it? Yes, that's going to give me A back. So 0 is the additive identity. Can I multiply A by 0 and get A back? No. Can I multiply A by 1 and get A back? Yes. So 1 is the multiplicative identity. Right? We're going to need each of those in different instances. If we're adding, we're going to have to somehow get a 0 in place to get rid of something. And if we're multiplying, we're going to have to get a 1. The next one we're going to move on to inverse. These guys are related. So the inverse has to do with what can I do to a number to get rid of it? And when I say get rid of it, I mean, how can I turn it into the identity for that particular operation? So if I'm dealing with addition, what can I add to end up with 0? Or if I'm dealing with multiplication, this time I want to end up with 1, because 0 is the additive identity, and 1 is the multiplicative identity. Well, in the case of addition, we're going to add the opposite sign. The opposite of A is negative A if we're talking about addition. That's how we get to 0. The opposite of A is 1 over A, or the reciprocal of A, if we're talking about multiplication, because that's what we can do to get to 1. So, right, a couple examples with numbers. And if we're multiplying fractions, remember we do just multiply straight across. We could end up with 5 over 5, that would give us 1, or we can cross cancel, and that would get us 1. So we have the additive inverse, and we have the multiplicative inverse. The next property is the associative property, and when you think of associative, think group. Right? You hang out with a group. You associate with a group. What do parentheses do? They group. So associative is the one that has the parentheses. So if I have 3 and 1 and 5 that I'm going to add all together, it doesn't matter how I group them. The associative property tells us whether I group the 3 and the 1, or whether I group the 1 and the 5, I'm still going to end up with 9. Those are equivalent statements. In multiplication, doesn't matter whether I group the 5 and the 3, and multiply by 2, or the 2 and the 5, and then multiply by 3. I'm going to take different paths to get there, but either way, with those same numbers all attached by multiplication, I'm still going to end up with 30. So, again, there's an associative property of addition, and also associative property of multiplication. Commutative property. What's in the middle of commutative? Mutate. Think change or transform. Right? There's a mutate in the middle of that word. So it doesn't matter whether I have 6 plus 4 or 4 plus 6. Either way, I get 10. Doesn't matter whether I have 6 times 4 or 4 times 6. Either way, I get 24. So commutative property of addition and commutative property of multiplication. And distributive property, right? We can do that whole math problem. We don't have to talk about the distributive property. Could we use the distributive property? Well, we could. We're going to get the same answer. But why don't we have to? When do we need the distributive property? Well, we need it when we have something like this. We need it when we don't have like terms. Because this way, no matter what x is, if we just multiply the 3 by the x and 3 by the 7, because we saw how that worked on the right side up above, we're going to get the same answer no matter what. So no matter what x happens to be, we're going to be okay because we followed the right rules. The distributive property will hold. Or I should say the distributive property will allow us to get the right answer. Closure. Closure just says if you add two real numbers, you're going to get a real number. If you're going to multiply two real numbers, you're going to end up with a real number. And really, that's just as important this year because we're going to start learning about imaginary numbers. And you need to make sure that if you're going to add some things, you're not going to end up with an imaginary number. If you're going to multiply some things, you're not going to end up with an imaginary number. Right? So, that's about it.